What's up, Bone Ponies? Tabletop Totality here, and we're gonna get into some. I guess got weapons, tools, depends where you want them or use them. But we're gonna get into some interesting tabletop RPG stuff. But before that, let us get our introductions out of the way. I am, of course, Neil, as previously stated.
I am Cody.
And I'm Steve.
So,
He's more like the concept of Steve.
well, because Steve's stuck in Denver. Because Denver
I'll-
has
Steve is
everything.
like this space-time continuum octopus that just exists in all of our minds.
I'm stuck in Denver, even though I'm not in Denver. But
Correct.
Denver has everything, bro.
Denver has
What do you
everything.
do?
So paradoxically, we're all in Denver and all not in Denver.
You know what? You know what Denver also has?
What does Denver have?
Crafting in their tabletop RPGs. All right.
Yeah.
And
They craft so much stuff.
surprisingly enough, you too can have it even if you're not in Denver. I think it's a really good thing to have in a tabletop RPG. Some don't focus it on it as much as others anymore. Like Dungeons and Dragons. In 3.5, they had a big, if you're going to craft something, there's a certain amount of experience you got to spend if it's magical or even if it's a spell.
Yeah.
If, the profession style of crafting, so like blacksmithing, things like that were a lot easier, because anybody can do it. You just have to have the skill into it. And, in 5e, it's not mentioned as much. There is still a big crafting aspect. You can still do everything, but let's be honest. No matter what the game is, as long as your character has the skill, you should be able to craft. So how do we exactly get that implemented is kind of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about kind of our uses of crafting in any of our games that we've played, in any tabletop RPG, whatever it may be. That's pretty much what we're going to talk about today. Pro crafting. I think it's good to have. I think one of the funniest lines that has came out of us doing the business, and I don't know if it was recorded or not. I don't think it was. Came from when we had Frank was playing and we were doing some play testing, and he was like, yeah, so I'm this cleric and I have all of these, like, I'm a level 10 cleric, so I'm gonna have like a couple of just basic use spell scrolls that I know how to cast, so why wouldn't I prepare this? And everybody was like, yeah, that makes sense. Why wouldn't a spellcaster who can cast these spells already have them pre-prepared in a scroll? So this way they don't expend a spell slot during combat. And I think that is an amazing
Why
idea.
wouldn't a ranger know how to keep up on their bows or fletch an arrow or
Yeah.
it makes sense. And I too am pro crafting. I've certainly abused some things in the crafting systems, like in Star Wars. Where
belts illegal in Star
belts
Wars.
are illegal in Star
Throughout the
Wars.
galaxy.
Thanks to me.
It only makes, it's a bigger bomb.
Yeah. So, but crafting, I think crafting is cool because it allows a player to gives them an opportunity to maybe make something that just isn't in the game.
Mhm.
Maybe they want a custom weapon. Maybe they want a custom wand or a magic item that does a very specific thing that's not in the game. And I think that you, as the overlord, allowing that crafting process is, I think it provides something for that player to work towards. It's a goal that they want to do. And I think that it makes things a little bit more, like earning them is a little bit more sweet when you do that, as opposed to just being like, oh, you can just go to any store and they just have everything in the DMG. Like I don't really get behind that.
Well, I think we, like, even in the aspect of, all right, you go out, if you are a warrior, whatever, ranger, whatever it may be, that is constantly out surviving, they're gonna know tricks of the trade. they're going to encounter maybe a large sandworm, kill the sandworm, realize this hide, thick, thick with 5 C's.
Yeah.
They're gonna look at it as a different way. They're gonna look at, how can I repurpose this? My gear isn't as thick as that. Can I wear this? What is this bonus gonna give me? And I've played a lot of survival-esque characters that way. I'm currently playing one in our long-running campaign where anything my character looks at, how can this better me against my next enemy, my next foe? This was difficult for me. How can I use it against my enemies? Or my enemies use this against me. How can I repurpose this against my enemies? That's going to be something that happens if you have a high survivalist type of character. They're going to go and take, different metals they see, different hides, whatever it may be. They're going to collect these things. It's not just going to be from a dragon. Like everybody knows, oh, I found some dragon scales, I'm going to go and repurpose these somewhere. Well, why can't you do that with any animal stuff? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of stuff that's not going to be, yeah, you have to have a well-working, relationship with your overlord to create some new stuff. But really all you got to look at it as is, I think we did this, Cody, is, well, this armor is lighter, but it offers as much as protection as this level of armor. So it's still a medium level armor, but it's the equivalent of a full plate armor protection.
Bucklers. Bucklers, man. What happened to the buckler wizards?
Bucklers matter.
Yeah, jeez. But no, you touched on some good things, and I think that before 5th edition, crafting was definitely something that a lot of people were really into, but it was very costly. It cost a lot of time. It cost a lot of experience. You actually, sometimes to make things, you had to weaken your character by levels to make that thing. And I'm not such a big fan of that.
I think it works. It can work well in the old mentality of not using milestones, but you use experience. I just killed 12 kobolds. Well, I got my experience that I needed to make this magical arrow. You know what I mean? I think that was the trade-off in the mechanics of the systems.
Right. And I think for 5th edition, the best thing that they did was, like, I mean, they streamlined everything. So, like, you can have tool proficiencies, and okay, I have a brewer's kit and I can make beer, I can make a healing potion or whatever. And it's a hunky dory. It's not really like super involved. It's pretty easy because that's what 5th edition was trying to do. It was trying to make what was super clunky in 3 and 3.5 accessible to a whole new group of people. Which was successful, right? Say what you want about 5th edition, but I mean, that's what people are playing right now.
Yeah.
So what they did in Star Wars, the D20 for Star Wars that Wizards had, that was more based on resources and time. And so that was something that we did in our downtime activities, was create stuff. And so the last character I made was a gunsmith. He could make his own guns and he could make different weapons and stuff. So on my downtime, I took my resources, I created something, and then I would sell them for more resources or trade them. I would build droids that then helped me build more stuff. And so it was a very, like, it was, you got into it what you put into it, right? And I think that is something that could be translated over to 5th edition. And
I
certainly
think easily.
before
absolutely.
Certainly before the artificer class was fully legit. I mean, really, who was making stuff? And even the artificer, it's kind of like, oh well, I can just make a magic robot dog. I can add this magical effect to this random item on a whim. It's not the same as, you need to go get the resources. You need to spend the time to do this. And it's also something that I think that when a player goes through that, like, it's more rewarding, but it's also like the item maybe is more important, more valuable,
Correct. I
because
would agree.
there was a trial to get it, or there was a great amount of effort put into it,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know?
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like, I'm also pro crafting. So much so that
Gotcha.
when we were developing like a class called the Witch, and I was sort of thinking about how that could work, and basically made that like my concept for that class was entirely about crafting. The entire thing was about one of the types of witches that I wanted to develop was about making potions specifically, and the whole idea there was like like we were talking about, like you have these detriments to your crafting where you're spending experience, and then it moved on in Star Wars to being more about like collecting resources and collecting and taking time, and like this is a way to sort of make that into a system that could work in fifth edition and in other role playing games. I think is it's like I want to make a like we want to make a healing potion. Okay, well, what are the ingredients of a healing potion? It's this plant, this thing, and like the blood of a hag or something, like some magical thing. Okay, well, you have to go and collect those things in order to create the healing potion. So now you have an adventure for your
Right.
party
It
to
just
go
made
on to
another
collect.
quest for
Yeah,
you.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to make a potion
Yeah.
of giant strength. Okay, well, you need to get blood from a giant to make it. Okay, well, then I guess we're going and attacking a giant to get the blood for it. You
And
know, like stuff like that would be
it
kind of
also
cool.
allows another level of customization and
Yeah,
personalization.
Yes.
To be
exactly.
like, I need to make something for this specific thing,
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yes.
you know?
I
Like the
yeah.
armor I made in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I need to be able to pick up enemy communications
Mm-hmm.
because my character had a lot of heat on him. So basically,
Yeah.
I was like,
Oh, he's
he
paranoid. Yeah.
needs he needs a scanner in his armor
Yeah.
so that he can figure out when people are going to try to ambush him. And that armor was like saved my
Yeah.
character's life many times.
Yeah.
It was
But
great.
it took me months of the character's actual life in downtime
Yeah.
and thousands and thousands and thousands of credits to make that happen.
Right.
But then that armor was my baby.
Yep.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like it was something that I had earned as well. You
Yeah.
Yeah.
know, it wasn't like
Absolutely.
it wasn't like, oh yeah, you just find this sword and yep, it just lets you kill dragons immediately.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it was like, oh, okay, no, I made this sword specifically to kill a specific dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or a
I would
specific
You
type of
know,
dragon, or a
yeah.
specific type of creature, or
Yeah.
whatever. But like,
There's a really cool thing actually in the Strongholds and Followers book that Matt Colville put out.
yeah, that Colville.
That there is a uh what is it? Black Heart Scrolls or something along those lines, but pretty much what it ends up becoming is a protection scroll against certain creatures, and the way that they make the protection scroll is actually from a creature's heart of so that same creature. So like, hey, you're going to be dealing with a lot of gnolls. Well, I'm going to make sure one of the gnolls I kill, I'm going to harvest its heart out, and I'm going to give it to so and so to craft this for me.
yeah.
And if it works, for the Strongholds and Followers book, it works out great because, usually that's one of your followers. So, just bringing them the heart, they boop, done. Here you go. After a certain amount of time, there's no real cost for it besides the immediate cost of that. But there's also, who's to say there isn't somebody out there that you encounter that goes, well, yeah, I could get that done. It's going to cost you this though, and I'm still going to need that heart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just because in one it's presented in one application doesn't mean it can't be meant in others.
Yeah.
So I think adapting crafting styles. So, you know, you played some TTRPG that you like very much, and one of the mechanics in it for their crafting you like a lot better than 5e's, which doesn't really get in depth, or it allows the overlord to do with it what it is. If it is nothing, then it's nothing. If it's crafting, it's crafting. Well, use mechanics from those things. Whatever TTRPG you're playing, use those mechanics to help quantify crafting. I think, just thinking historically, because we like to do that here at Tabletop Totality, your warriors, your soldiers, all of these types of people, even your common folk could craft whatever it was in their field. You didn't need to be a blacksmith to go about certain things, but you should know how to hone your weaponry.
And
Any soldier, you don't need to be a blacksmith to I shouldn't have to go to a blacksmith to get everything, done perfectly. You know
If
what I
you
mean?
had if you had a halberd made of chainmail, right, and
Mm-hmm.
that was something you had, not only was that extremely valuable, it was also like one of the only things keeping you alive,
Yep.
obviously, in terrible situations. So you knew how to clean that thing. You knew how to take care of it.
mhm,
And you probably did so pretty regularly
Yep.
because when do you want that to fail on you?
Never.
Never.
yeah,
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I think that I think crafting is a really big thing that you can kind of work into your downtime to
Mm-hmm.
make downtime more significant,
Yes.
because it's like, hey, you know what, yes, Rimrick, you want to create armor from this new metal that you found, which is just as hard as titanium but half the weight,
Yep.
right? And you have an access to it, and you have a blacksmith who can do it. That's all well and fine. But when you're halfway across the world doing whatever, that is not happening. You're
Mm-hmm.
not making that stuff. And I think that that's a good time for you to be like, yeah, you know what? Your characters are going to take a month off.
Yep.
And
mhm,
now we can get into that sort of stuff. We've mentioned Critical Role before, and the Legend of Vox Machina, so season 1. Percy DeRollo and his bad news and the pepper box, his guns, right? Those were creations that his character made specifically, and there was percentages for things like failures, gun jams, things
Mm-hmm.
like that, and it created like a whole aspect, like a whole system within the game for that character, for the story that they wanted to tell. So you can do that. Don't be afraid just because fifth edition is light on that stuff.
It's
yeah,
light on
You
that
know,
stuff,
you can
which makes it so much better for you to do these things. Because
absolutely,
you can
yes.
just implement practically anything into the mechanics without messing something up. I
mhm,
think that is at the bare minimum a good thing about the system. Because it doesn't have everything flushed out, you can really kind of piece in and make it what you want it to be. Sorry to cut you off there. Got a big,
No, no, no.
big
And
exciting
I
point.
yeah. Neil's got a point and he's making
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But I think another aspect too is I think sometimes maybe overlords, DMs, storytellers, keepers, whatever you want to call yourself. I think sometimes there's some hesitancy about
Mm,
letting people craft and make their own stuff because you're worried that, I don't want my player to make some sort of wand that can just destroy a dragon like right off the bat, or
yeah,
make something that just completely broken and overpowered. Well, a tip from the Overlord's manual, right, would be you can give and you can always take away,
mhm,
right? So you don't have to fear that. But I would advise that when you're going to do something like crafting, you're going to let people make that special something. Be realistic with some fail safes.
yeah.
You know, my armor was super powerful in that Star Wars campaign, right? But it was not resistant to an EMP or an ion blast. That would shut it right down.
mhm,
If a Sith Lord decided to drain the energy from the power pack that was powering my armor systems, now my armor is it's just armor. There's no electronics
Yeah,
working
there's no
in it.
yeah,
specialty.
Sean played a character, our friend Sean played a character who was a ranger that had a rifle. It was a rifle that he found. There was constantly quests that he had to go on to modify something or to fix a
mhm,
part,
yeah,
and if he got something that was like, oh, Sean's character just did a full repeater with his rifle and shot like 20 enemies, and the DM was like, well, that was a little kind of broken. You can modify that as you go forward. You know, just like what I was saying, like with Percy stuff, there could be a failure, you know, and it could be done in a way that it's not like you're punishing the player. You're not like, oh yeah, I
Nope.
let you make this, but now I'm going to take it away.
But
Yeah.
everything's got to have, with great stuff's got to have great fallback too. There's got to
Yeah,
be, if
and
a failure happens, it's going to be something worthwhile because you're getting this level of what, great reward. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
absolutely. Yeah, and another thing is like as the overlord, a part of your job is kind of, saying no to your players about certain things that they want to do. Like if they want to make that busted thing and they're like adamant about it, you can just tell them you can't make that.
Yeah.
But if they're willing to talk to you about it and they're willing to be like, well, we can retool it to make it more fair or more balanced, then like
Yeah.
you can work with your players to allow them to do that. But if they're just going to make something that's broken, they want to make that thing that can kill a dragon in one hit, and you tell them you can't do that, but we can modify it to make it like give you advantage on it or deal
Or
more
give you
damage to
more
dragons,
damage for
whatever it
dragon,
is,
but
and
it's
they say
weaker to something else, yeah.
and
even
they say no, I'm making this to kill that dragon in one hit. Then you say, well, then you can't make it because
That doesn't
that's
exist. Yep.
that doesn't you can't
well,
do that.
not even that, but okay, so you come to me, right, and you're like, I'm gonna make this crazy dragon slicer. It's the Ginsu knife of dragons. That's what this thing is that I'm making.
Yep.
I think, okay, how are you gonna do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How is it that you're gonna do this? What makes it so much different from anything else that you can find in the game? Why
Yeah.
is this sword better?
That's fair
What is
too.
it that you're gonna do that's gonna make it better? And then if they come up with, oh well, I happen to know that this dragon that wiped out my homeland, that there was a people that used to fight these dragons off with obsidian. Okay. So now you can travel back to your homeland, you can get obsidian to forge into the sword. You can make it work
Oh, absolutely. That's
without having to just be like, no.
yeah. But I
Well,
mean, like
You
yeah, but it goes
that's
to that
it's
aspect, I
mitigation
think.
versus
Yeah.
you can say like, yeah, you can make that sword out of obsidian and it'll deal more damage to that dragon, or it'll give you advantage on attacks against that dragon. You can't make that sword and say, I slice the dragon with this sword and it dies. You can't unless they're willing to go to lengths that are equal to or greater than the feat of killing that dragon, which like
Why not just kill the
you have to
dragon?
kill
Yeah.
10 of its children, which are all adult dragons, in order to kill this ancient dragon. It's like just kill the dragon with like a normal
Hey man,
weapon at
if
that
you pulled
point.
that off, if you
Yeah.
were like, if I was like, hey, you need to get the
10 of its kin.
primary
Yeah.
the primary incisor from 10 of its relatives to
Yeah.
forge into this thing,
The heart,
and
the
you went
from
off
the
and you
hearts
did
from
it.
yeah.
Yeah, all right, this thing chops a dragon like
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
you know what
only
I
the
mean?
kin, only those dragons. You
Right,
know what I
right.
mean?
That specific family of
Yeah,
dragons.
it has to be something nuts
Yeah.
for that to
But
actually be
no,
something that broken.
I
But
agree. I think that, but there's like two aspects of it, right? And I think
mhm.
anybody can bring to their table simple crafting. All right. You don't need to do what we just discussed about a dragon killing sword for the family of, because that's the dragon family.
Yeah.
In Draconic specifically.
That's canon. That's canon.
um, but you could do simple things. Like one of the things that I love the game, I love their system, and Symbaroum, created by Free League, they
Hmm.
have a great medicus aspect. So they have this crafting through like alchemy and things of that nature that yeah, this person's skilled in this field, so they know how to find herbal medicines. Well, they're skilled in making the medicine, so they not only can find it, but they can craft this stuff. Well, guess what? That alchemy field, you have multiple things you can craft in, and now you know how to make the stuff. Very
Yeah.
simple. You know what I mean? And you don't need to find a lot of it, but anytime you're out traveling, it's now on that player to make it what it is. And luckily, the one person who we've played with, Robert, they do it all the time. Like that's their
I
thing.
think Robert.
Yeah, I've known him for at
At least
least
a
a
year.
year.
No. Right. Okay.
And so, but like the way he does it, it's very simple, and it's not broken in the sense that he can get these extra, herbs very easy to come by in where we're playing, unless we're in very, dangerous or rough terrain. And then, when he's asking me about these other things that are high level items that he can create, he carries the process. Well, I go, well, to make those, you got to find more rare resources. It's not going to be an easy, oh, I traveled for 2 hours, I found 4 herbs, now I have 4 herbal cures. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
not
and
going to
that
be that relation. And that's the same thing you
right.
get with more powerful armor, more powerful weapons. Do you want to create, maybe a new spell or, some incantation, some ritual? Well, the more difficult it becomes, it's going to be one of those things that needs more put into it. It's gonna need something added on besides
Yeah.
just the, oh,
Hmm.
yep, I'm adventuring around for it. You
And
know?
I think inherently too, like there is somewhat of a system for that in D&D, like with the wizard class
Yep.
or like with spells that require material components, because there's some spells like when you're summoning like celestials or like fiends or stuff like that, that's pretty specific. Like
Yep.
you need to have the blood of somebody from that died within the last 24 hours or something.
Yep.
That's
Hmm.
not something that you're going to be able to be like go to the mom and pop store in the middle of town and be
Yeah.
like, yeah, I need demon blood for my spell.
I
Like,
need a
you
pint
know,
of demon blood freshly acquired.
right? So like that's an aspect of it that's like already in the game, and you can translate that over to
Other
whatever.
crafting
But on
things, you know what I
but
mean?
on the same token, like what Neil was saying before, like there's certain things that like you don't have to be super complicated with it. Like
Correct.
if your ranger or your druid wants to make like a small fishing basket trap or something, like do they really need to roll a million checks to make that happen?
Yeah.
No.
Is it really that important? Is
Is
it
it in their
outside of their
background?
right? Is it outside of their wheelhouse that they couldn't do
Yep.
this? If
Right.
you have a character that's been living in the woods by themselves for 15 years,
Yeah.
I'm sure they know how to hunt and make traps and stuff
Yep.
Yeah.
like that.
I mean, it
And
goes
it's
back.
an
Yeah.
easy thing where you don't have to nail them on that.
Hmm.
But then at the same token, oh, my wizard Graz wants to learn this new spell, but she has to have this item. She has to have the brain matter of a zombie or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, you can't just go get that. Like I have to
Mhm.
go and earn that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's these are all ways that you can kind of incorporate the crafting and making things that aren't explicitly in the book without having to reinvent the wheel. Essentially, you don't have
Yep.
to like
Yeah.
make a whole new system to incorporate this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
And it's
I
like, yeah, if it makes sense, then it should work. Because I mean, like going back to something that Neil had said earlier about how like thinking historically,
Only talk about things that I said. Don't.
like
no, it's
no,
only me.
no.
I am the
But
Hey,
idea.
talking about things that like talking about like things historically, like he had said before, like when he was saying like common people had crafts and stuff. Like common people, like you think back to like medieval times and whatever, what do you think of when you think of peasants? You think of farmers, you think of hunters, you think of people that are able to gather resources knowledgeably and are able to harvest those things and understand, you know, good good from bad and how to like dress and skin an animal and things like that.
well,
So, you have somebody
to
with that kind of background or that kind of knowledge, they would be able to obtain those things
Hmm.
without really needing to like roll checks for them or to craft them. It would just take them time, and
to
that's
add
something.
to your point that you're
Mhm.
making, and as a historian, I'm going to talk about some history
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah,
Just gonna throw that out there.
yeah. Sure.
Um, so one of the things I want to say is that I've been watching some of the I've been watching some documentaries about the Danish and Scandinavians in England and the formation of England and the Dane Law. And without getting super specific about it, one of the things that allowed the Vikings to succeed while they were in England is that essentially wherever they went, they were capable of stripping the resources from anywhere where they went.
Yep.
They could hunt, they could fish, they could forage, they could do all of these things. They didn't need to have a town to survive.
Yep.
So they could just show up and live off of your land, and now they're a problem.
Yep.
You know? So there's a certain amount of capability and things that are going to be, I think you should equate into your character.
Mhm.
And some of this even comes like from like your character's background.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like
big
we
time.
were saying before, fitting your background. Oh, even your character's race. Okay, dwarves, right? Don't dwarves get a natural bonus to like stonecraft and things like that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, I mean specific dwarves, not all
Yeah,
dwarves.
yeah, yeah,
Not
yeah.
try. I'm not trying to, you know.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
But I think, you know, I think that these are all things that you can kind of play up. Like you were talking about Robert's character in Simbarum, you know, Akak.
Yeah. Well,
He's constantly, I'm going to look for new herbs. I'm going to look for this. I'm going to look for that.
And
And
even
it's
your
not,
character in that is always like, I'm going to go hunting.
yeah,
well,
yeah.
so
I'm
is
gonna
yours,
go.
Steve. You're just not successful.
It's not very good
Yeah,
at it.
exactly. You got to hit something, boy. And it's going to add an extra element to the game that some people are going to really enjoy. Like we played Star Wars, and there was plenty of times where Sean and myself were like, we just crafted for a whole month.
Yeah.
Like that's what we did. We took a month off. We just
That's
crafted
exactly
stuff,
it.
you know.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing when it goes to, oh well, so and so wants to go and study from like a massive library and learn some new thing. They can go do that, and it can be just as simple as, oh, I'm going to spend time to fix my armor or add some extra thing.
Crafting
you know?
crafting
Or make a
definitely
thing.
just comes into so many different areas, and
Yeah.
at the baseline it's very easy to add in. You could
Yeah.
go way above with it. You could just be very minute with it. But I think it'll highlight any game play and any TTRPG you kind of go with.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like all you have to do is think about what resources the person might need, how they would obtain those resources, and then determine whether or not there's a roll that they have to make, or multiple rolls depending on how long it takes for them to do it.
Exactly. Yep.
And the rolls should be ones that already exist in the system. And if they're not, then you need to make one up. You can just make one up and figure out what ability it requires. It shouldn't be anything too complicated, honestly.
Nope.
Like
No,
we've been
I
saying.
don't think
Not
you have to
much.
worry. I don't think you have to worry. I'm sorry, Neil, but I don't think you have to worry too much about if something, if you let somebody make something and it's like maybe not what you expected, or the system isn't, the rule you implemented isn't as beneficial or as neutral as you thought it was
Yeah.
going to be, and it's kind of changing things in the wrong direction. That's where you can implement like simple things. You don't have to take the thing away from them, but you can throw a wrench in the wheels. You know,
Yeah.
you can say, hey,
Yeah.
listen, all of your charges for all your power charges got wet when your ship crashed. The gun's misfiring. You know,
Yeah.
your musket is misfiring. You don't have to.
Well,
I
there's
guess
so many
I've-
different ways that we could also explain it and
yeah.
and go through it and try and help you at your table. But we're hitting the end of our time here. If you liked what we talked about, definitely go into the comments below, add into the conversation, add your input. Maybe ask us to, hey, do you guys want to do another episode on it? Because really, we won't say no. We'll talk about it.
Yeah,
we
any
could talk
of the
about it
topics we've
for
talked about before
forever.
or into the future, we could do more about. Maybe
Um,
except for the classes of D&D specifically, because those were just kind of us.
I mean,
trying
we could
that
do
out,
them.
but
We could do them.
I mean, we could, but you know, we've done better content in my opinion than those. I think.
But that pretty much wraps it up for us talking about crafting in a TTRPG. Could be very involved, could not be. It's whatever you would like it to be. But thank you all of the Bone Ponies who came out to watch today or the day you watch it. Moving
whatever
forward,
day that is.
whatever day it is, it could be
Or if
today,
you
it could
watch
be
it,
yesterday.
or if you watch it multiple days.
Right.
You know?
Watch it over and
Um,
over
Get those view counts
again.
up, babies.
yeah, but make sure if you like all of our content here, go to our drive through RPG to be able to see our adventure books that we put out, and then also follow us, on Instagram, Twitter, Reddit. We're on there. We talk about a bunch of stuff. And make sure if you want some nice Bone Pony merch, some good old tabletop totality swag. We have a T Publix as well. That we create all of our merch through.
Yes, and we are also revamping our Patreon, and there's going to be monthly exclusive content on there that you will not see anywhere else. So
Exactly.
uh, definitely check out the Patreon for as little as $1 a month, and that dollar goes right into our projects.
Yeah,
So
And as
it's
much
all right
as
there.
you hear it all the time, like, comment, and subscribe on this video to show that you appreciate what we're doing and you want to see more of it.
it definitely helps us out for sure. And
Absolutely.
I think probably the final point I'd like to make about the whole crafting thing is if you have access to it, I'd check out Xanathar's Guide to Everything,
Mm-hmm.
as they have some really good tables for different toolkits and things that you can do with those kits to give you some ideas. Get them mind juices flowing.
Juice.
For Dungeons and Dragons specifically.
Yeah.
For D&D specifically. Or also check out Strongholds and Followers, which is for 5th edition, but I think it's written in a way that you
could
can
use it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But otherwise, everything we've mentioned is in the crowd below. I think that's it for us. Boom. We'll catch you next time.
Rich!
Yeah.
Did you say?
Damn.
Wait. Did you just say get ranched?
I did.